Okay, let's get it. Black girl magic dripping. Yeah, she's on a mission. Keeping our culture lifted. Now you can watch and listen to Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac. Oh, what show is that? It's the Tammi Mac Show on Fox Soul. Tammi Mac, hey, Tammi Mac, yeah. Ooh, that Tammi Mac. Tammi Mac, hey, so you know it's Tammi Mac, hey, Tammi Mac.
Welcome to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Good afternoon, good evening, and in some case, good night. But good evening, everybody. I am Tammi Mac. So according to The Atlantic, the average cost of childcare in the United States is $16,000 per year. In Joe Biden's $1.8 trillion proposed American Families Plan, low and middle income families would spend no more than 7% of their total income on childcare. Let me tell you, I could use that kind of help on mortgage and rent in Los Angeles, California, because when I say 85% of folks' money in LA is going to just having a roof over their heads, but I digress. That's not what we talk about tonight. The plan also provides free community college and paid family and medical leave. The reviews are mixed when it comes to how people feel about Joe Biden's plan. So the business of being Black tonight is the Joe Biden's American Families Plan. Please welcome the Deputy Director of Family Values at Work, Josephine Calipini. Hi, Josephine.
Hi, Tammy. Nice to be with you tonight.
Thank you. Political commentator and host of iHeartRadio's The Mo Kelly Show. Mo Kelly himself is here. Hi, Mo Kelly.
Good evening, Tammy. It's always good to see you and dialogue with you.
Political commentator and contributor for RedState.com, Jeff Charles is back. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, Tammy. I'm glad to be here. We're going to have some fun.
Yes, an author, columnist, and political commentator, Adrienne Norman, is right here with us. I don't think I've ever enjoyed my first question more than I do tonight. And that's because the first question on the Tammi Mac Late Show is traditionally always the same question, but it holds a heavy, heavy meaning tonight because it was Black people who put Joe Biden into office. Let us not be mistaken about that. So the question is, why should Black people care? Why should Black people care about Joe Biden's American Families Plan? Josephine, go for it.
Listen, Tammy, like my closest girlfriends, I'm a single, educated Black woman. I have a good job and I make a decent salary. And while I don't have a partner or a child to take care of, I do have brothers and sisters. I have an amazing mom who has made so many sacrifices for me throughout her life. And because of my job and because of the flexibility of my schedule, I'm the one that gets called on when anybody needs anything. So when we talk about the need for paid family and medical leave beyond childcare, which is what me and you were talking about earlier, and I think about the needs and being able to give back to my mom, the American Family Plan is exactly that. And the need for paid family and medical leave impacts Black folks, Black workers the most. And that's why this is so important to us.
It's interesting because you are right when you say it impacts Black families the most, because I think more Black families than any other families are caregivers. I can't tell you how many of my friends today are caring for their mother, are caring for their grandmother, are caring for their father, have moved them into the homes with them. And I see it a lot. So that's a good point. Mo Kelly, let's get it. Why should Black people care about Joe Biden's Families Plan?
Because Black people are Americans. We're not separate and distinct from this conversation. We are integral to this conversation. We have kids just like everyone else. And I would think of this as an adjunct to his American Jobs Plan. Part of job viability is availability. And if you have parents who are unavailable because they are lacking childcare, or they don't have the resources available, or they're not even able to get that extra schooling in terms of 2 years of community college, or be able to start their children at an early start, a preschool that can start, then we're already behind, or we're having difficulties just being available in that job market. So when we talk about the American Families Plan, we're talking about Black families too. And we should always include ourselves in that discussion. And if we want to make it political, we can go back to Ronald Reagan and saying a rising tide lifts all boats. Well, if we're talking about American families and this lifts all American families, it's going to lift African American families as well.
There it is. The tide is a rising. Jeff, what are your thoughts? Why should Black people care about Joe Biden's plan?
Well, the issues that the plan is supposed to address are important to all Americans. And like Mo Kelly said, that includes Black Americans as well. When it comes to education, when it comes to childcare, when it comes to employment, when it comes to economic benefits and family, those are important issues. But when we're looking at the American Families Plan, we also need to recognize that with these issues, we need actual solutions. Actual long-term solutions that will help us to grow. Unfortunately, with this plan, what I'm saying is that there's not much here that I think is going to have any long-term benefit other than expanding the government, which has historically mistreated us. And there's not much meat here. It sounds like a lot of throwing money at the situation, and Black people need to be aware of that so that we can call on our politicians, Republican or Democrat, to implement actual solutions that will help our community.
So it sounds like you're saying Black people should care because this might not be the solution after all. Yes. Adrian, your thoughts on this? Why should Black people care about Joe Biden's Families Plan?
I'm in agreement with Jeff. You know, it's a situation where the long-term costs might be greater than the short-term gains. You know, a lot of these problems could be solved through action through the private sector. And I'm not sure about the impact of expanding the federal government, what that's going to have in terms of the cost of spending billions and billions of dollars for these programs, which we're already seeing after the coronavirus stimulus is increasing the cost of inflation. So if we're talking about creating economic benefits for people in the short term, we got to think about what that's going to mean in the long term. So essentially, you know, if let's just say the cost of childcare or cost of a loaf of bread is something today, you know, if we have massive inflation hikes because we're spending all this money right now in the short term, your dollar's going to be worth less later. It's going to end up costing families more. And childcare is just going to be one of those costs that ends up having a huge, we're going to have sticker shock when it comes down the road. So it seems like a good idea now. It could have a lot of unintended consequences down the road, as we've seen with a lot of other failed Democratic policies over the last 60 years.
Sound like you're blaming it on the Democrats here.
It is what it is.
Let's talk about the plan itself. Let's talk about some things that are included in the plan. Let me grab what's in the American Families Plan for the people. National paid family and medical leave. Expand tax cuts for working families. They're going to make the Affordable Care Act premium tax credits permanent. Further extend the expanded child tax credit. Make the earned income tax credit expansion permanent. Permanently increase the child and dependent care tax credit. Provide free community college. And then there's a nutrition support in this plan as well. And obviously, that's just a little bit of the plan. What am I missing in this plan, Josephine, that we should be talking about?
You know, you hit some of the really great major points. It's important to remember that the American Family Plan was announced at the end of April and is the second installation of President Biden's economic recovery plan. We know that this isn't going to be something that can be solved overnight. So the fact that this is phased in is really intentional and really thoughtful. And in the second installation, like you named, it covers free preschool for all 3 and 4-year-olds, which we know is important in our communities. It caps family expenses for childcare for 7% of income. Again, important when we think about how Black communities are at the intersection of low wages and lack of economic mobility when it comes to employment. So those out-of-pocket expenses when it comes to care really hits us a lot and really hits us heavily. But it's important for us to know, as you mentioned, Tammy, that caregiving really shows up in our communities a lot, whether it's for children, whether it's for our big mamas and our grandparents and our aging parents. The idea that we don't have a national paid leave plan in place in this country, we're only one of 2 nations in this world that don't have it, and that this is investing that is really important. So it will lead up to 12 weeks. It covers an expansive definition of family, and it really has progressive wage replacement, which is important for people to know, because if you can't afford to take time to care and time to heal yourself, if you have to take time off and it means that you can't actually pay your rent and make your payments, make your mortgage payments, then it's hard to take that time. And so it's really, really important for our communities to know that this is a major investment. This is laying the foundation. This isn't the end all be all, but when we talk about chronically underinvested systems that we know are the safety nets for our communities first, and that this is a major investment in that, it's important to consider that. It's important to celebrate that, and it's important to know that that's not the end.
Look, so I thought that's what Aflac was for, but I guess I'm wrong. You know, I thought that was for. Jeff, what am I missing? What are we missing from this plan? I laid out a few things, but what is important? What do you think are some things laid out in the plan that are important and that do work?
Well, I mean, I don't think you missed a whole lot of it. I mean, there was a community college issue, which I'm not too much of a fan of. It sounds like throwing a lot of money after something that really isn't working. I mean, our community college system is broken in this country. A recent study has showed that only about 30% of community college students completed their 2-year degree program within 6 years. And the stats actually get worse than that. I won't bore you with all the details, but we're talking about a $1.8 trillion plan here. And a lot of it involves spending on things that won't actually have any cogent benefits. I mean, when you go to the paid family leave, that sounds good, but I think they need to go back to the drawing board on that. It's basically a one-size-fits-all program that it's going to be less lucrative than employer-provided plans. So it's going to be more restrictive because you're not going to have as many options. And at the same time, it's not really going to provide the benefit that it promises. Now, I will say that one of the things that I like about it, you mentioned, you know, tax cuts. If there are actually tax cuts involved in this, and I'll believe it when I see it, you're not going to get a disagreement from me on that. When it comes to tax credits, tax cuts, I like all of that. But some of this other stuff where it just sounds more like feel-good measures, feel-good provisions that won't actually provide a concrete benefit over the long term.
That sounds like you make a lot of money. But when we talk about community college, though, and we talk about people who don't complete a 2-year community college, could that be because of funds? I mean, a lot of people don't complete 4-year colleges because of the lack of funds. I mean, when I went to college, that was the main reason that people dropped out, was because they could not afford the tuition. So perhaps with this plan, and you get free tuition for community college, perhaps people will begin to complete that term. Mo Kelly, what are we missing here? What do you like or dislike about this plan?
Well, I love the community college aspect. I'm the son of 2 educators, so I'm never going to devalue the importance of education. And if you want to talk about student debt, cutting it in half, well, you can do that by allowing people to go to community college for 2 years. And you're cutting it in half, literally. And let me go back to the cost of this $1.9 trillion plan. If we remember the Trump tax cuts, and not to make it political, but just historical perspective, that Trump tax cut was estimated a cost of $2.3 trillion over the next 10 years to our society. And if I'm not mistaken, $2.3 trillion in 2018 is probably even more in 2021. So if we're really concerned about our expenditure, then let's be honest, 2.3 trillion in 2018 was okay, but it's not okay in 2021. And let's also, you ask what I like about this plan. There's actually a provision to help pay for some of this. It's not just money out the door. It'll be raising taxes on those individuals or households which make over $400,000, and also increasing the corporate tax rate back to 28%, which it was prior to the Trump administration. There's nothing wrong with spending if there's also a revenue portion to it. So it's not going to be revenue neutral, but it's not just gross expenditure for the sake of expenditure, as some people might characterize it. So to answer your question, I love the community college aspect because it actually addresses then student debt, and also the fact that it's actually offering a way to pay for itself.
Ah, a way to pay for itself. Adrian, I'm going to get to you, but we got to take a quick break on the Tammy Mack Late Show. We'll be right back. Don't you go nowhere. Welcome back to the Tammy Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Tonight, the business of being Black is Joe Biden's American Families Plan. Let's go to the chat and see what they're chatting about right now. Itchy Man 99 says, bring it out, Josephine Calipini. Sarita Green says, if the United States government is taking billions of dollars from Americans, then how and when should that money be spent, if not on the needs of Americans? Miss Pinky Thoughts, our soulmate, says, this is stuffing progressive policies using the pandemic as an excuse. And Incog says, we're missing the unintended consequences of misguided compassion. How many degrees you got, Incog? Families will have less autonomy over their lives. It won't solve real problems like childcare, education, health, care, and welfare. I believe, Adrian, you agree with that. Yes, no?
I do. And don't get me wrong, I'm all for education. So whether we're talking about spending money on pre-K, whether we're talking about helping people get into a community college, a trade school, university, that's all well and good. But we got to keep in mind the government cannot give that which it has not already taken from us. It's our own money. This isn't free. There's no free college. There's no free childcare. There's no free anything. The government has either already taken this money or it's going to somehow confiscate it from us. Now, the idea that it's revenue neutral, I think, is a little bit of a farce because, look, if we're going to raise the tax rate on the rich from 20% to 39.6%, which is what's being proposed, keep in mind that rich people are real good about keeping their money. All that's going to happen is they're going to hire more attorneys, they're going to hire more accountants, and they're going to find ways to get tax deductions to offset those costs, which is why historically we see that when we have higher tax rates, we have lower tax revenue. That's not going to change just because Joe Biden is president.
Tammy, can I jump in there?
Yeah.
First, I didn't say.
Go ahead, Mo.
No, I just want to say, first, I didn't say it would be revenue neutral, but it did offer some way to pay for it. And let's not forget, just about everyone on this call, probably most of our education from kindergarten through the 12th grade was quote unquote free, as in paid by the taxpayers. That's like the birthday cake. And now we want to quibble about the candles on top of the birthday cake for 2 years of community college. I think it's disingenuous to say that we can have the quote unquote free education from kindergarten through 12th grade through high school and then say we can't do community college. That's a bridge too far. I think we're really selling the American people short if we tell them that we can't do 2 years of community college, but kindergarten through 12th grade, we got you.
Yeah, and Mo, I want to weigh in too and say that a few things that I heard that I found really interesting. First and foremost, the first time we talked about national paid leave was in 1984, Jeff. And so if you think the private market is going to solve it, we're still waiting. So if we're not thinking about alternative solutions that share the responsibility across this country, then we're going to be waiting for 10 more years while we're waiting for alternative solutions to come from somewhere. At least now we're having public national discourse and dialogue based on real solutions. And as a person who who got an associate degree first before going to a 4-year institution, and as the oldest of 6 kids, trust me when I tell you that the burden of cost that my parents paid for me to get here, to be on this show, to be talking about these issues in a way that directly impacts Black and Brown communities, my parents went into debt to make sure that we had the opportunities that we needed. And as a result, they have no inheritance to pass on to their children. We are setting up generations to age into poverty if we don't fix the problems now. And we have had long-term conversations around what the solutions are. We know what the solutions are. What's been missing is the financial investment. So the idea that we don't need to put money into the solutions we've been talking about for a long time is the actual farce. We know what works. Our families make it work on a day-to-day basis. And the reality is we need to front load those financial investments. And that's what this plan does.
Jeff, go.
Yeah, so here's the thing about that. I'm going to address the paid family leave just really quick because I want to get back to the community college. But I mean, as far as the free market and versus government, I mean, since 2017, the amount of companies providing paid family leave doubled. So and more is even expected. I mean, so companies are going to need to provide this in order to stay competitive. So we already are on that track. But when we're talking about community colleges, we're talking about spending $109 billion on a community college system that doesn't work. I understand Mo Kelly's point. I don't have a problem with the idea of community colleges, but I'm not feeling comfortable spending my taxpayer money on something that has such a low graduation rate. I mean, it's only 7.7% that completed a bachelor's degree at a 4-year institution within a 6-year time frame. On top of that, a lot of students going to community college can get Pell Grants and other grants that can all but pay for their community college experience. So we're throwing $109 billion after something that a lot of people can already take advantage of. And I'm not seeing it reaping I'm not seeing that we're going to reap the benefits of anything much until we fix that system.
Adrian?
Just to piggyback, I mean, he's absolutely right. I mean, 65% of Americans already have paid leave. So it's not like this is some issue where we're still stuck where we were 40 years ago. We're not. You know, we're a lot closer to where we want to be than what is being characterized as. And again, like you said with the Pell Grants, I'm not sure the solution that would be best for the country in the long term rests with giving more power, more control to the federal government, spending more of our U.S. tax dollars on something that we pretty much know isn't going to work.
Well, it's interesting that you say we're not where we were. But then in the same vein, both you and Jeff feel like this plan can be better and can work differently. But then Josephine says, look, it's a start. So in order to be not where we were, don't we have to start somewhere? Well,
we do have to start somewhere, but it's also important to remember that it's better to do good than to feel good. And we've seen a lot of policies in the past that have had unintended consequences because there was an urge to do something, even though the something that we did at the time was the wrong move. In California, not too long ago, you know, they had policies where they wanted to see the minimum wage be increased to $15 an hour. It seems like the right thing to do. Let's start there. Some people are making $12. It's only a $3 increase, right? Here's what happened. We saw companies like McDonald's, when they were forced to pay their employees $15 an hour, simply fire their workers and get rid of them. And they put up kiosks. So kids who were making, and young people, you know, new employees who were making $10 an hour, $12 an hour, $7 an hour, instead of being bumped up to $15 an hour, they got fired. They made zero.
Well, now, Adrian, I'm as much as I hate to admit it, I be all up in the McDonald's. And I ain't never seen no kiosk. I see the kiosk at the airport where I put in how many bags I got. But when I go to McDonald's, I have never seen, when I say I unfortunately frequent McDonald's, I don't mean just in LA. I mean in Houston, I mean in Birmingham, I mean in Mississippi, and I've yet to see a kiosk in McDonald's. So was that just an exaggeration? Because honestly, I believe that these corporations, come on, and we're talking about one of the corporations that their slogan is over $1 billion served, which means that the profit that they're making can absolutely justify a $3 raise for employees.
The point is that jumping headlong into policies that feel good but that may not produce the outcomes that we want is just a bad strategy.
Tammi? Here's the truth of the matter, though. This is a country of innovation. And if we're not willing to step out on innovation and learn what we learn and then iterate forward, we're missing the mark, particularly in this moment when families are feeling the pressure point post-pandemic. And let's also lay it all out on the table. The conversation we're having, mostly amongst men on this panel, is really centered in the devaluation of women's labor. If we think about the need for care and caregiving support, it's deeply rooted in our country's history of free and unpaid labor by women of color. And no one now lives in an environment or in a household where you can afford to not have working adults working just to make ends meet. And if we're not thinking about how to maintain women in the workforce and how to support them through policies like childcare, affordable childcare, and paid family and medical leave, we're going to lose working adults in our households, and we need those funds in our families.
Jeff, how do you feel about that?
Yeah, actually, I think Josephine brings up a great point. I like that she brought up the idea or the issue of women working or in the workforce or having both parents work. Here's the thing, though. I mean, a recent a study, I think it was Pew Research, found that the majority of Americans, and this would include Black people, prefer a situation where one parent stays home while the other works, whether that's the man or the woman. But this proposal doesn't do anything for those people who want that situation, but they would lose income if they had that. I think that we would be better served if we had a situation or a plan that could do something for families that want one parent to work while the other stays home and make that easier to happen, so that we're not making it so let me back that up. So we're not incentivizing a situation in which both parents work when that's not really what they want. Now, if they do want to do it that way, then they can. If they do want both parents working, that's fine. We're in a free country. But I think that this ignores the majority of the country who would prefer to have one parent at work and one at home.
Mo, go.
Look, I think the closest corollary would have to be healthcare. We had this similar debate trying to help the same group of people, and we were told that the enemy is the enemy of the good. Obamacare was not perfect, but it was, like Josephine said, a starting point to improve the situation. And I'm quite sure we can debate this all night until the cows come home. And with all great respect to Adrian and Jeff, they're not going to like the majority of this bill. But the majority of this bill improves the lives of more Black and brown people than if we did not have it. And as a practical matter, we know that on Capitol Hill, Mitch McConnell's made it very clear they're not going to support anything. They didn't even support the American Recovery Act for $1,400 checks for Americans, mostly Black and brown people. Let's be honest about it. So if we're talking about actually helping Black folks, if we're actually talking about Black women, heads of household, many times in our houses, in our communities, then we have to be honest and look at this and say, it's not everything for everyone, but it has something which specifically speaks to us and our condition. And from that, we can move forward. Be it incrementally, it doesn't necessarily have to be transformative change, but it can be, because I do know we're better off as Black folks because we had Obamacare going into the pandemic than without it.
It would have been a dangerous thing to not have had insurance going into that pandemic. I can't lie about that. Adrian, Mo Kelly makes an interesting point here. In 2010, Mitch McConnell said that his top priority was to make President Obama a one-term president. And then he doubled down on that on May 5th. He said 100% of his focus is stopping President Joe Biden's administration. So if McConnell and the GOP's goal is for President Biden to fail, then why should Democrats even listen to what Republicans have to say? If this is not a situation where everybody goes in for Americans, but rather some people are going in against.
Well, I mean, they have both houses of Congress, they have the White House. I haven't seen too much of an appetite for Democrats to want to work with the GOP at all anyway. So I'm not, it's kind of a
but it's very difficult. Like, I mean, let's be honest here. It's been 8 years of Obama, right? That Mitch McConnell said, hey, y'all lost us. We're not doing nothing for this man. We don't even want him here for one term. And then here we are now in the stretch of what could be another 8 years. And Mitch McConnell is saying, we ain't doing nothing now either. So how do you work with somebody who refuses to work with you, not in a a covert kind of way, but in a very overt way, saying, I don't care. If you say the light's red, I'm going to say it's green. I don't care if it's red or not. How do you work with that?
Well, they don't want to work with Mitch McConnell with the GOP. That's why they're pushing things like packing the Supreme Court. That's why they're pushing things like DC statehood. They're pushing and moving as quickly as possible to institute very unpopular, divisive policies because they know they don't have or need GOP support in order to do it. So again, it's just a moot point.
Well, and on top of that,
point that Mitch McConnell has said he's not going to work with the Democrats
and also
with our president.
Also, Adrian, I want to come back to this thing that you said it's an unpopular thing. There's overwhelming public support. 84% of voters, bipartisan voters, nationally support policies like paid family and medical leave. Black communities that delivered his presidency are included in that polling number. Overwhelming amount of businesses support, as evidenced in the Care Economy Business Council that was launched this week, with over 200 businesses support these policies that we're talking about. So when we talk about whose vote is popular, what issues are popular, I think folks like Mitch McConnell and the GOP need to pay attention to what's popular with the voters, which are exactly these policies that are showing up in the American Families Plan.
Let's take a quick break. Go ahead.
We have this. I think we agree on the goals and what the outcomes should be. I think we have differing perspectives on how to get there. Again, 65% of the country already has paid leave. So of course, a majority of the country supports it because we're already doing it. The question is, what role should the federal government have? And does Joe Biden's plan is going to produce the results that we want as far as getting more people the type of coverage that we want? And my perspective on this is that this particular plan does not accomplish that. Again, we agree on the goals of what it should look like, on what the outcomes should be. We just differ on how to get there and whether or not this program does it.
Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get here, and that's a commercial break. And then we're going to come right back here on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Tonight, the business of being Black is Joe Biden's American Families Plan. Now, with me today is the Deputy Director of Family Values at Work, Josephine Calipini, political commentator and the host of iHeartRadio's The Mo Kelly Show, Mo Kelly, political commentator and contributor for RedState.com, Jeff Charles, and author, columnist, and political commentator, Adrian Norman. I'm going to go grab some comments from our chat room. Our soulmate, Elizabeth C., says the statistics are wrong. First, the community college has a 13 to 16% graduation rate. Now define the term graduation rate. Community colleges are rated by completion of a degree. Community colleges have students who come to take one class or to complete a certificate, and they are counted as a non-completion. Let's see, who else here? Finally, this argument that Black women are interested in staying home. First of all, no one said Black. Well, hold on now. Ain't nobody said nothing about Black women staying at home, sis. Now, I'm with you when you're right, but now ain't nobody. I heard Jeff talking about the statistics, but he never said Black women wanted to stay at home. Okay. Black women have been working for money since before slavery ended. Read the literature. I'm going to have to read that literature. I am. Please send me that literature. I want to talk to Mo Kelly real quick. Mo, you've compared President Biden's American Families Plan to President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society. And I have to ask, though, and also FDR's New Deal approach. But did Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society, did it work? It was built off of the total elimination of poverty and injustice when it came to medical, education, and things like that, and poverty. Did that work? Do you think that worked at all?
The short answer is no. And I think that we weren't ready as a society. There were some systemic inequities that were not addressed, like we didn't have the Fair Housing Act in place and some other things. That's the short answer. But when I made the comparison to LBJ and also FDR, Joe Biden is trying to go big in a transformational sense. And I, with great respect, say this again, I understand and agree with a lot of what Adrian is saying as far as what you want the government to do or not do. But we're at an inflection point where we need the government to do something. We need to be better now than we were before. And if we don't do it now, then when? If not Joe Biden, then who? I would love to say there is a Republican equivalent to healthcare. I've yet to see it. There is a Republican equivalent for education. I've yet to see it. So I have to go with the person who's coming with something, even if it's incremental improvement, is going to get us further in an educational sense, in a childcare sense, in a community college sense, however you want to phrase it, than where we were before. Because if it's not going to be Joe Biden's plan, I don't think that there's going to be a plan coming from a Donald Trump or anyone else or a Governor Christie or anyone who might be running in 2024. So if there's no alternative, then let's be honest about what we are dealing with in this moment and know that it is actually better than anything else, which is not on the table.
Well, yeah, and to piggyback off of that,
go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I mean, and I don't appreciate Mo Kelly reading my mind and saying what I was going to say, but he did it anyway. Because here's
Y'all agreeing? What?
Yeah. Well, because here's my thing. I mean, this plan, I mean, and we disagree on this plan. I mean, I don't think that most of it is good. I think very little of it is good. So I do not think that this is a good starting point. However, I have no problem calling out my own party on this. I mean, the Republicans need to be coming, if they don't like this plan, they need to come with an alternative. I mean, if they end up taking back at least one chamber of the House in 2022, which is looking like that's going to happen, they don't get to complain about this and then not come with a competing idea. Right now, we're just opposing.
Well, Jeff, this is the same thing that Republicans did with the Affordable Care Act. They didn't want it. They wanted to get rid of it, but they had nothing to replace it. Yeah. This is going to crush Republicans every single time.
Yeah, and I won't defend them on that.
The optics of it are just bad. They're bad. It looks like we just don't want to agree. We don't have nothing, but we just don't want to agree. I'm going to go grab some comments from the chat room real quick because they're in here. Jason Bourne, our soulmate, says tax dollars pay civil suits every time an officer kills someone and gets to skate. Our tax dollars don't benefit us. Can we cut this our tax dollars BS, please? And then also our soulmate says, Tammi Mac, they have ordering machines and kiosks in McDonald's now. Okay, so maybe I'm trying to be a little healthier and I haven't been in a while. Maybe. You know, we did have some fries this morning for breakfast. No.
They don't all have them, but I've seen them.
You know, I think the one, I will say, Jeff, I think one thing that we have to be really mindful of as Black folks is every time that we're told to wait until it's perfect, we are losing out on generational opportunities to advance and gain economic stability. And the reality is we can't sit around and keep waiting for decades at the impact of various generations, especially when families are feeling this pressure point. And Tammi, I love that you started this segment with correcting facts because I want to come back to something Adrian said. Adrian, you said twice now that 60% of Americans have access to paid leave. And the reality is only 20% of Americans have access to paid leave through their jobs and their employers. And less than 60% have access to FMLA, which provides job protections, but not wage replacement when you have to take leave. So framing FMLA as paid leave is actually incorrect. So I want to put that out there, different stats, but people should check their facts. And we are always fighting against misinformation, especially to the Black community. So I wanted to make sure to correct that.
Well, I want to tag on to your weight. And then we mentioned with Mo Kelly, Lyndon B. Johnson. Martin Luther King famously said, wait has almost always meant never. And he specifically meant it when Lyndon B. Johnson kept telling him to wait when it came to Black people's voting rights. Wait. And so he said to LBJ's wait, look, wait has almost always meant never. So if we were or are to wait, I do ask, Adrian, what are we waiting for?
Anything other than this proposal. I mean, again, we agree that change needs to happen. We agree that some of these things need to be redressed. We're just differing on what that strategy should be and what it looked like. What
should it be? What should it be?
Well, we're talking about 10 different issues. I mean, what specifically? I mean, if we're talking
let's take the free community college since that's the most simple on the table.
Well, again, there are other options. I mean, why aren't we talking about trade schools and giving kids other options?
So you're saying free trade schools?
Well, again, if we're talking about free, again, nothing's free. We're talking about.
So you're talking about taxpayers.
What should it look like? To what degree should taxpayers subsidize these things? And then again, what specifics do those programs look like? And again, I'm not seeing anything that looks like it's going to achieve the outcomes that are stated with this particular proposal.
Tammy, if I could jump in, if for some reason Donald Trump or someone on the right is elected president in 2024, what plan is going to be forwarded? Is it going to be a part of the platform? The platform for the Republicans in 2020, and I'm saying this as an independent, did not exist. Education has never been a priority for the Republican Party, other than talking about critical race theory, and that's not education. That's just a talking point. That's an aggrieved tactic. So if it's not going to be right now, if it's not going to be with this president, and we know that Mitch McConnell is not going to negotiate in good faith and not really come to the table and say, we like this, but we don't like that, or we like that, but we need a little more of this, then we're never going to get to a better plan that Adrian may want. So what are we really discussing at this point? If we know that the Republicans are not going to negotiate in good faith, and they said that they're not going to, and we know that you, Adrian, and Jeff don't like a lot of what's in this bill, and we know that the subsequent Republican president is not going to offer anything counter to this, then I don't want to wait until 2024 or 2028 before we can talk about community college, because I have grandkids by then.
Well, I know that, hold that thought. I know that, wait, if you will. I know that wait has almost always meant never, but wait, we will be right back. I promise, on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul. I don't know why this panel has got me going crazy tonight. Then I go crazy on most nights, but there's something about this panel I'm in love with. On Tuesday, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy announced his opposition to a bipartisan January 6th commission, even though he was able to secure almost all the concessions he sought. Now, should Democrats continue to negotiate with Republicans when the GOP says no to deals, no matter what's in these deals, Jeff?
Well, I mean, with that particular issue, I mean, to me, it's just overkill. I mean, there are already congressional investigations into the riots. The FBI is already investigating it. I mean, I don't see a reason to throw millions of dollars after yet another investigation. I mean, what is it going to turn up that we're not already going to find out? It just seems like another ploy to keep it in the public eye so that they can so that the Democrats can continue to use it. It's clever, but I have no reason to think that this is necessary.
I think Mo is itching to get in.
Yeah, I just remember about 35 different congressional investigations of Hillary Clinton and Benghazi. And I was born early enough in history to remember those things. I don't understand how now it's a bridge too far, but back then it was okay. Or now it's too much money to be spent, but back then it was really necessary and in the interest of the public good. I'm not a fan of Hillary Clinton. I'm just saying, I remember what happened then. And what happened on January 6th was abominable, and it should be treated as such. It was an attack on our capital. It was an attack on our democracy. And anything less than that in the characterization is, again, disingenuous. And I think if we need 5 congressional investigations to get to the bottom of what Congress members were possibly participating, giving guided tours the day before, I want all that stuff. I want it all, because I believe the nation deserves to know the truth, because there is no greater, I would say, subject for Congress to handle than when Congress was attacked.
But it's already being treated like it's abominable. I mean, you got like 5 people out there who are defending it, but the rest of the nation, Republican and Democrat, thinks that it was ridiculous. They think that these people should go to jail. Again, I'm not sure what another investigation is going to turn up that isn't already going to turn up.
Kevin McCarthy subpoena, testify before Congress. That's something that will turn up.
Oh, well, now perhaps that's why he's, Adrian?
Yeah, maybe we'll find out why Nancy Pelosi rejected the National Guard to provide additional support. I mean, there are a lot of things that we already know about the January 6th attack. And if we look at how Democrats have handled other investigations and other commissions, whether it be the Russia collusion hoax, whether it be the Kavanaugh hearings, whether it be how they dragged the Covington Catholic boys, you know, we have a 4-year history of things that were completely sham investigations. And I think if you think that this is going to be anything other than a partisan political hit to try to impact the 2022 midterm elections, then you're a complete idiot.
But Republicans did Russia. Those are Republicans.
Republicans didn't weaponize the Russia investigation.
Robert Mueller was a Republican.
Republicans did not weaponize the Russia investigation. That investigation
It's weird because the Democrats did not have control of the House or the Senate then. So they were minority members of the committee. So I'm not exactly sure that's a fair telling of history.
It is. And again, I just listed multiple examples of investigations and how things have been treated and covered by that political party. And again, it's just about the fact that we're not going to get a fair assessment of the facts and a fair outcome. This is going to be weaponized politically to do as much political damage as possible. And I don't think that it's reasonable to assume that we're going to have an honest fact-finding mission to determine what actually happened. Again, we already have multiple investigations underway. A lot of it's on video. A lot of it, we already know what happened. This is going to be used specifically to try to damage Republicans into the 2022 midterms, because a lot of what the Democrats are proposing are very, very unpopular with the American people. And a lot of people, even Democrats, now have buyer's remorse when it comes to Joe Biden. They need something, and this is.
Listen, the only remorse I have is that I don't get as much excitement as I did when Trump was in there. You know, I need some more excitement in my presidency. Let's talk about this paid leave. Our soulmate says, I have 2 kids, and each kid I went back to work within a few days. Why? Paid leave is not your full salary. Can we speak on it, Josephine?
Sure. I mean, it's one of the things that we as a Black community have to be incredibly diligent about. Just because it says paid leave in the title, and just because Republicans are willing to talk about paid leave, does not mean that all proposals are equal. We have to really think about the 3 key equity factors that impact Black communities. And one of those things is exactly what you're talking about. What is the rate of which wage is being replaced? If it's not at a rate that makes sense, it's not going to be enough to actually take the time that you need to heal after giving birth and make it worth it in a way that allows you to continue to make ends meet. So we have to pay attention to wage replacement. We have to pay attention to job protection. And we have to make sure that the definition of family is not limited in the way conservatives tend to think about it. The way Black communities think about families is very expansive, very broad. It includes our cousins. It includes not just your spouse and not just your children. So those are the 3 things we have to be diligent about as a Black community. And when we're hearing and talking about paid leave, we're the only country that limits paid leave when it's time to go back to work as a new parent. And when it's time to take care of your own self for healing, and when it's time to take care of the people that you love.
One of our soulmates, Keeping Nettie, says, Tammi Mack and Mo Kelly in the same space. I'm in Fox Soul heaven. Well, we're going to drop you back down from heaven with a commercial break, but we'll bring you back up when we return on the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul. Welcome back to the Tammi Mack Late Show on Fox Soul, where tonight the business of being Black is Joe Biden's American Families Plan. We have been speaking with the Deputy Director of Family Values at Work, Josephine Calipini, political commentator and the host of iHeartRadio's The Mo Kelly Show, Mo Kelly, political commentator and contributor for RedState.com, Jeff Charles, and author, columnist, and political commentator, Adrian Norman. Going back to the soulmates one last time, Kawana McCrae says, how things are going right now, I'm glad I don't have any kids because I don't have to take care of nobody but myself. I hear you, girlfriend. Won't all that. Josephine, carrying a cross. How can we be a part of it? How can we experience it?
So I really invite people to check out familyvaluesatwork.org and to really think about and join us in creating an economic future that works for everybody. It is about having these conversations that are based in values-based solutions that really impact our communities first and foremost, because we know that if we solve for Black communities, we solve for everybody. We all win when we do it that way.
And how can we reach out?
You can find us on Twitter, you can find us on Facebook, and you can find us online. We're always doing things in different states. We're doing things to do educational town halls and continuing to have these conversations about the real issues that impact families.
Jeff, how can we get a hold of the Red and Black Show?
Yeah, that's on YouTube, the Red and Black Show. You can get me on Twitter at Jeff on the Right. And you can also check out my YouTube channel, which is A Fresh Perspective with Jeff Charles. And I also have a podcast by the same name.
I'm assuming the Red and Black is a Republican who's Black?
Yes.
Those degrees come in handy sometimes.
Yeah,
Boy,
got it.
a whole $35,000 for that. Y'all like, where did you go to school? Adrian, The Art of the Steal. Sounds like you stole one of your favorite person's book titles there.
Yeah, it was definitely a play on words. It was certainly intentional. It was a book on election fraud. Not sure anybody read it when they were supposed to, because we had a lot of issues last year, but we'll save that for a different show. But all my handles are under Adrian Norman DC. And I do have some additional projects and things on the way as well. But I appreciate you having me on, and really enjoyed all of you tonight.
Thank you so much. And Mo Kelly, it's the Mo Kelly Show. I'm sure I'm a fan, so I'm sure many others are too. So tell us how we can get the Mo Kelly Show and when.
Well, you can always reach me Saturdays and Sundays on KFI AM 640 in Los Angeles and iHeartRadio. Get me on my personal website, mrmokelly.com. I also do commentaries for the Black Information Network on iHeartRadio. Let's continue this dialogue. Being on KFI, it's the #1 news talk station in America, #1 stream station on iHeartRadio, but I am the only African-American voice. So I need your support.
They sound like they need some more Black people over there.
Come on now.
They need more Black people.
Come on.
They need more Black people. Yeah, listen, it is 2021. Literally, the line I hate the most in this decade is I'm the only Black person. Like, that should not exist in any spaces in America. I should not be the only Black person in the neighborhood, the only Black person with some kind of car, the only Black person with a talk show, the only Black person. It should not happen in 2021. We've got to progress if we really don't progress. Thank you so much, Josephine, Jeff, Adrian, and Mo Kelly. Appreciate you so much. Until tomorrow, everybody, it's a blessing to be in your box on the Tammi Mac Late Show on Fox Soul.